So, welcome and thank you for joining us for another episode of our Try Catch podcast powered by EI2. Today, some fabulous guests will be talking about their personal experiences as women in technology. My name is Sydney Andreasen, and I will be our guest host of the day. I have some great women here with me for this episode, so let's just get started with some introductions. I myself am an application developer at Farm Credit Services of America, where I have been for just under a year and a half. And now I'll let you all introduce yourselves to our listeners. If you could give your name and a little information about your career and what you do, that would be excellent.
I'll start, I guess. Shonna Dorsey. So I'm with Mutual of Omaha Insurance Company, and I am a manager in our information services area, and I focus mostly on talent attraction, engagement, and retention. I'll turn it over to Monika if that's helpful.
Sure. So Monika Philp, Director of Leadership and Member Development at the AIM Institute. I feel like I've done so many different hats in the organization, but currently I help lead our IT Leadership Academies programs, and then also work with our board members and engagement in the community with the members. So.
And hi, I'm Kate Larsen. I am a Salesforce administrator, also at Farm Credit Services of America. And I've been there for now 6 years. So I started as an intern, worked part-time, and then for the past 3 years now, I've been working on the Salesforce team. Started as a business analyst and then moved into a little bit more of a technical role as an administrator. I've been loving that.
Awesome. We're so glad to have you all here today. So let's just get the conversation warmed up with a question that hopefully feels like a no-brainer. Why is it so important for women to be in technology? And don't go racing to that microphone.
I could definitely.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead, Monika.
So, technology is a wonderful career path for anyone. Tech careers are high demand, high wage, high skilled, and I believe there's a place for everyone in tech, and there's such diversity in those jobs, and so as you know, technology is leading the way and it's changing everything, but it's also planting opportunities everywhere. So there are benefits of having both men and women in those teams, and so. Again, technology is something that is leading the way, and I think it's just a great opportunity for anyone to get into tech, especially women. So,
yeah, I really think just all the perspectives that we can provide when at the table, that's so important, and just having that voice and new ideas, new perspectives. I think that's the biggest thing I think about why it's so important for women to be in technology.
I agree, and that diversity in general is key. So the diverse perspectives, experiences, all of it. It's great to have women at the table to be contributing to those conversations.
So now I'd love for each of you to give a little context for the listeners about you personally. So let's talk about your personal experiences. Firstly, when or how did each of you know that you wanted to get into tech?
I mean, from what I can remember, I always thought differently. I had that entrepreneurial mindset, and just kind of give you an example. When I was 10 years old, I ended up having for Christmas, I ended up having my parents buy me one of those gumball machines that it was one of those Walmart or whatever ones, but you put a quarter in, but you don't have to really have to put money in. It would still it still give you a gumball without having to put money in. And so I asked that for my parents, and so I got that for Christmas, and then I would ask then I would go on the playground and sell the gum and get money for the gumballs, and so I was just I always thought how can I make money, or how can I be more creative? How can I solve a challenge? So just kind of having that background of problem solving, and just kind of the technical of how can I make something better, and so a little bit, I guess that's my kind of experience from when it all started. I always kind of thought differently.
Love that. And for myself, I also found interest in it at a very young age. I loved playing with computers, just messing around with them, and kind of figuring out how they worked in the back end, and then kind of moving on to middle school, high school. I actually went to a Take Your Kids to Work day with my mom. So my mom is a very big reason why I'm here today. Is she was a business analyst at a company here in Omaha, and so going to Take Your Kids to Work day, I loved just being in that environment. They were doing agile, they were doing stand-ups and ceremonies, and I was able to see that in middle school, and I found that really, really exciting. I loved just seeing the process and the collaboration, and how she was, facilitating meetings, and how she was kind of leading the group and helping them out. And so from there, I started in high school going to some of the different knowledge sessions that UNO had, learning about some of the different paths that you can take in technology, because there's just so many, I feel like so many different avenues. And so I went in, officially decided that I wanted to study management information systems, went to college for that, got my degree in that, and did go down the business analyst path similar to my mom. From there, I've moved into the admin role, and I've been loving it since then.
That's awesome. I love hearing these stories. I happen to know Kate and Monika outside of this conversation, but I had no idea that this was your background. So this is great to hear. My journey has been definitely kind of all over the place, which I appreciate. I have a lot of perspective, I think, with that. But one of the things that has kept me in tech is the types of opportunities it provides to others. So I am a huge advocate of empowering people to do things that they didn't think were possible or that they hadn't had access to or exposure to before. So one of my projects that led me to tech that I always reference, and I haven't thought about this in a long time, but whenever I think about it, I'm like, yeah, this is the perfect spot for me. But when I was a master's student at UNO studying management information systems like Kate, I remember in my capstone program or my capstone course, we had the chance to work with Project Harmony. And so Project Harmony helps kids who have had, just abusive things happen to them. And it's, very sad and unfortunate, but we were presented with the opportunity to help them streamline the way that they captured the video interviews with those kids and law enforcement and other people in protective type of services for the kiddos. And that project had a huge impact on me. So I wasn't a developer on that project. I didn't build the application, but I was the project manager on it. And just being able to help drive the work, help the team clear impediments and all of that stuff, even though I wasn't a developer, has been hugely impactful to me because, like Monika said, there's such a variety of jobs in tech. So this was one of the times where I felt that I could add a lot of value in tech, even though I wasn't going to necessarily build an application. And I've continued to spread that word and also have that type of career since then. So anyway.
I think that's great. Very
I think that
inspiring.
The different background of different things that you have does bring a lot of benefits to an organization and just, in tech in general. So it's just great when people do have that background. So. And you've been a great supporter of a lot of the women and things that in the community, Shonna. So just I want to give you a high five, virtual high five.
You too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. So next, what barriers did you all face while getting into tech, or even what barriers might you still face?
So I can speak a little bit. So my background and experience is more in like the tech business and IT leadership side. So my perspective is a little bit unique. Some of the barriers overcoming my own, I think it's overcoming my own insecurities, and just that imposter syndrome of being a female in IT leadership industry can be intimidating, and so I remember doubting if I should even apply for the position that opened up, was director of IT leadership. And I had like 90% of the things that, the qualifications, right? And I was still like thinking, like, should I apply? Should I not apply? I mean, I qualified, but then I had my coworker that like maybe 7 years, like, and this is real statistics when they think of, like when men apply versus women apply, right? He applied and he was like so excited. He's like, and I was like, wait, you apply? Like, you don't like, but then again, like limiting my own, beliefs and insecurities. And so I applied and I ended up getting the position and I feel like my own confidence and my own insecurities and imposter syndrome, just kind of overcoming those barriers. And specifically in that IT leadership role, has been something that I've learned getting out of my own way, Yeah,
I would definitely second that. I was going to say, exactly the same thing, that it's really my own mind that I'm trying to battle and work through, feeling like, you aren't good enough, or you don't belong here. Maybe you aren't smart enough. You maybe aren't the right fit for that role, but then everybody else tells you that, you'd be a great fit and that you should go apply and you should take that chance. And something else for my background is I did come from a small school, so I only had about 50 others in my class, and I didn't see anybody else that was going into technology no one that looked like me, no one that, I could relate to. So from that, I think it really just made me second guess and, not feel like I really fit in. But, once I got into college and found those support groups, it definitely helped push me forward and helped me work through the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, same here. And I definitely experienced a lot of that early in my career, and also being like a Black woman in tech adjacent technicals in Nebraska, where there are not very many of us. I don't live in Nebraska anymore, but I still work for a Nebraska-based company. So the majority of my career was spent in Nebraska, if that helps. But definitely have experienced, especially early in my career, my fair share of naysayers, if you will. And I will say that on the flip side, one thing that has helped me a lot is having a strong support system. And I think that's one of the things that you'll probably get into this. I might be jumping ahead, Sydney. But I think one of the things that we can do as women and allies of women is to be more supportive and to provide those mentoring opportunities, job shadows, et cetera, like just reach out and be proactive about that, because I think that really made a difference for me, because I could have opted out a long time ago. But like Kate and Monika, I'm sure have had people along the way who have said, just stick with it and you'll find your place. And I have. So
Awesome. Well, that's a great lead in. We started to get into a little bit of that support system talk. Can you guys share any specific like key experiences or advice that really helped you become successful in technology?
sure, I can start with this one. We'll just kind of mix it up a little bit. But one of my favorite stories from back when I was a help desk representative, sorry, let me be respectful, it's a hard job, a help desk analyst a long time ago, was I was really struggling with that imposter syndrome and just trying to fit in. And it was like definitely an all boys club back then for that type of role. And I remember having some conversations that were maybe not very appropriate or supportive, and having a female colleague who was in a project manager role at the time overhear some of these conversations and take me aside at a lunch and say, it's really not okay that those types of comments are made around you, and you really need to like not allow that to happen. And the funny thing is, at that time I was like, wait, I can ask for that to not be happening around me. Like, because I hadn't been there that long, I thought of all the reasons why I should not be able to speak up for myself. And so one day, it took me a while, but one day I did. I was like, okay, she's right. This is annoying. And it really sucks to be in this position. But I asked, I was like, look, I don't like this kind of conversation happening around me. And they were like, oh, we're sorry. It didn't stop immediately, but it was very empowering to me to speak up, for one, feel heard, second, and then also to see things change over time. That was one of the catalysts, I think, for all of the things I've done since then. But it's just one person saying you should not accept that, and then me saying, I didn't know I could ask. So, or that I should expect something different,
I can go
This
next.
is in the early 2000s, by the way, in case people are like, that sounds like nothing I've ever seen. It was a while ago. So.
I mean, sadly, you don't see it as much, but that stuff still happens, right? And so just being able to have someone that kind of brings it up, and then having that courage to speak up and speak up for yourself, just creating a better culture for everybody. Again, I think we're moving in that direction, but there's still a lot of work to be done. But it does take just one person, right? So for me, I think just from, like, as I think about some of the things that have helped me be successful, is just like investing in my own personal and professional development. If the company didn't have the budget for the training, I wanted to take, it didn't keep me from investing in myself. And I think there's a Warren Buffett quote that says, like, the best investment you can make is in yourself. I think it's so true, because, again, a lot of times we often wait for, to get picked or given permission to do something, right? But your investment in yourself, you'll have the return on investment, does maybe not happen right away, but even with your annual reviews, like when my employer saw that I was investing in myself and growing myself in different areas, like, they see that there's growth in that. And so I couldn't stress enough, like, investing in your own personal and professional growth, so every year, I have a goal. I'm like, I'll invest, like, I'll pick a, whether it's like a big goal, or like a fitness goal, or just, something that I want to attend. And a lot of times it's not easy because, especially being a working mom, like, if I don't have to do something and it's not during working hours, it's really hard to take that time for yourself. But like I can't stress enough like how important it is for your own personal and professional development, but also for your own mental and mental health and all that. And so investing in yourself, that's something that will continue, especially when things are changing. Things are changing so much and all the time. Like you can't, like, staying the same is not an option. I mean, it is an option, but it's not a good one, right? And so just really, like, technology is changing, like you should be changing as a human, right? And so hopefully you're having some better things that you can be, whether it's communication or whatever it is, like invest in yourself. And then you don't have to think big, like you can start with Udemy classes, or you can maybe do a workshop or whatnot, but really that investment is gonna, like, when it comes to your annual review, you can ask for a bigger raise, because it's not the standard 3%, right? Because you know what you're worth and you know that you're growing yourself. And so I think for me, that personal professional development, investing in yourself, has really helped move my career a lot faster.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like I'm always better mentally when I feel like I'm growing and learning. It just helps long term too. So I agree with that. For me, it's been like my connections, my relationships have been a huge piece in my success. Going into college, I joined the UNO Women in Mentoring program right away, and that mentorship really set me up for success, the remaining of the 4 years, and even still connect with my mentors here today. I was actually able to get into an internship right away and start, learning just some hands-on skills that I might have not been able to get without that. So I do really think that, like, mentoring and all of those different connections that you make throughout college and your career are really valuable, because you can then reach out to them if, down the road, if you need some additional advice, or if you need guidance on maybe changing career paths, or if you do have that imposter syndrome and need to just talk through that. So that's been, a huge piece of my success.
Nice. And just to kind of add to that, going to different networking events, building those relationships, I think a lot of times it's hard for us to ask someone to be our mentor. When you think about other women, like sometimes it feels intimidating, or it feels like, oh, I feel like I need something, but I don't want to ask for something, but so just really looking in a way that, how can I provide value to this person, but also in a way that, like, that she could be a mentor, right? And so not being afraid to ask, because I've also noticed a lot of women that, like, especially in the leadership role, like the ones that are a lot higher, like they want to give back, and so if you are genuine and you really want to grow, like they will invest in you and mentor you. And so I can, the relationship mentorship is a really big part of the growth. But then also, like Shonna, you mentioned, having people that support you. Like, so for me, luckily I've been able to have a great manager where she really kind of just continues to, like, give me opportunities and help me grow, right? But not everyone has that, and so just being able to be more aware of, is your manager helping you grow, or are they kind of preventing you from growing, right? And so just kind of being more aware of that, and not getting upset if it's not there, right? Because maybe that's not the path for you. And so just knowing that there's opportunities with other organizations, that especially nowadays, like, you don't, if where you are is not where you want to be, just know that there are options, right? You're not stuck. And so just knowing that there are people that want to support you, there are organizations that want to, invest in you. And so
I think that's awesome. A little bit of combination of fighting for yourself to find those groups, and then once you do, they're all there to support you. And so next, I would like to talk about this quote unquote problem and what it looks like in the world today. So this is a little bit geared towards those of you that are comfortable speaking to the stats, so bear with me. But to start broadly, when you look at technology as a broad field, how prevalent are women in that part of the workforce today?
I think about this stuff a lot, just due to the nature of the work that I do. But I'll say, and Monika, Kate, would love to hear your thoughts on this, but I think you'll see, or I see at least, a lot more women in leadership roles, business analysts, project management, QA testing, roles like that. So people leader, product support type of roles. Where I think there's a huge opportunity is on the software engineering and architect side, and also on the information security and assurance side, huge opportunities, not a lot of representation. You do have schools that are trying to support this. There's a school in South Dakota, drawing a blank on the name right now, but they have an entire program dedicated to women in information security and supporting them, building them up, providing opportunities for them to connect with other women who are in this space and each other. But just backing up, I think that's where I see more representation or on those other roles, but I would love to see more on engineering and architecture.
Yeah, I think just even in general, like speaking of we have this perception that like technology, IT, you know, it's like it's very intimidating, and there's also, you can only be like a coder or, you know, just web development, but there's so many non-technical jobs that you can still be in the tech field, working with the IT department, working with the tech people. And so just thinking of all the non-technical jobs, but you can still be in the tech, you know, tech field. And so knowing that there's a lot of opportunities within this growing tech industry, really being able to find a place for yourself, you know, whether it's like you mentioned this, the cybersecurity, right? Like that industry, or even project management, like you're working with IT teams. And so just there's a lot, obviously, like the stats are not great when it comes to the representation of women, but I feel hopeful, you know, the fact that there is a lot of opportunities and support like that is starting to be available versus when we were just getting started, right? And so I don't know if that answered the question, but
That's awesome. That goes into kind of the broad and the narrow of where we all gravitate to, and where's there's some kind of holes for us to fill in as women. So now I'd like to talk about why this problem might exist. And I'll give you guys a couple of leads with a couple of different questions, but really take it wherever. So are women getting burnt out in the technology industry? And if so, then why?
well, I feel like, you know, in general, even just thinking of the last 3 years, you know, they've been challenging for everyone, especially women, or just women in general, but especially, you know, women in tech. You know, when you think about, you know, women that were reporting burnout, you know, versus their male colleagues, like there's definitely a huge percentage, you know. I feel like a lot of women took on more responsibilities, and so when you take on more responsibilities, you're not getting paid more. It's kind of like you're doing more for less, and it's just more like a burnout. But there's also taking on more responsibilities in the home. You know, sadly, you know, back in the day, it was like a woman stays home and takes care of the family, the kids, all the stuff, you know. And so doing more, you know, childcare and doing more housework. Luckily, my husband is a chef, so I didn't have to experience that, you know. And then my kids are like, so we tag team, so I'm grateful for that. But there's a lot of women that, like, you know, they cook, you know, they clean, they do all the different things, and like they still work, you know. And so that's just a lot to take on, you know. And so as women, we're like, oh, we're going to take on more, we're going to do more things, and we're going to make things better. But like in reality, like we're all kind of, it's just burning us, you know. It's a lot to take on. And so whether it's women in tech or just women in general, there's just a lot more things that came on, you know, from the pandemic that really just like increased a lot of the burnouts, especially in women.
I definitely agree with that. Yes, my perspective is a little different. I think it's definitely a piece of it that maybe some others have experienced too, but I know when I was in my previous job role, I definitely felt burnout, and I was trying to figure out why and kind of think through, you know, why I was feeling that and maybe what the cause of that was. And for me, I just felt like, you know, my skills were underutilized, or I wasn't quite in the right role. I was still for sure interested in staying in technology, but I didn't quite know where to go or what I was interested in. And then also, like we talked about, like the imposter syndrome of, well, like if I go into maybe a more technical role, like, do I even belong there? Do I know enough? I think all of that kind of combined into burnout, or just not knowing if, you know, this was the right path, or just confusion. So I think then tying the mentorship conversation that I was talking about before helped a ton too. Like it helped, you know, guide me into where I'm at today, where, you know, I did end up applying for a more technical role, and I feel like I'm in a lot better place right now. I feel like I utilize my skills, and I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and I'm excited. So thinking about others, I think that might be a piece of it too, is, you know, their skills may be underutilized, or they might not be in the, you know, exact right role, and they just don't know where to go from there. So having that mentorship and guidance would help all of that.
Yeah, these are interesting perspectives. So in my role, I lead a team. And so I get the opportunity, and I'm very fortunate for this, to help them clear roadblocks like this if they come up. And so I also truly value transparency and people being their authentic selves. And so if that means someone comes to me and they're like, look, I have a lot going on with kids in school and things like that, then I'm like, let's talk about what will make that work better for you. Because there's no real value in overworking people to the point where they cannot be productive and supporting the mission of the organization. And so I'm always thinking about ways to provide some better support for our associates. And our company has a culture of supporting associates in general. So it's like, not that we won't tolerate burnout, it happens, obviously. But if we're having conversations about it, then I'll do my best to help make that better for them. But I think the culture of companies helps drive this as well, unfortunately.
And I think one thing also, just to kind of add to that, when you think of, there's different burnouts, right? There's different things that are happening with different women, but why they're maybe leaving is the fact that there's not a lot of flexibility, especially after the pandemic, knowing that you can work from home. Like, why do I have to be back in the office? Unless it's really a reason for that. So just having that flexibility, some organizations are not doing that. I know Mutual is really great about that. And Farm Credit, you guys, you worked out with what you guys works for you, right? But there's some organizations that have to be back like full time. We're like, what? Why they're like, we never really left. I'm like, wait, what? Like, that's a thing. Like, there's some organizations in Nebraska that like just went right back 5 days a week, and it was like, well, you guys have an IT team, you don't have to be back, and so just a lot of culture shifts, but again, having that flexibility for women when they don't feel like they're stuck and they can't, be able to take care of the kids or do things like that. Like, there's just that burnout of like, there's just a lot to handle,
And I would say too that it's important for companies and teams to be proactive about that too. So the last thing that you want to do is wait till someone reaches the point of burnout and then talk about how to address it. But if you're thinking about, okay, how can we make sure that teams have work-life balance? It's like a funny term these days, but have some sort of balance and flexibility in their schedule where they have time to think and be creative. This is something I was just talking about with my team today, but that's important to them. So how do we figure out how to make that part of how we think about the work we commit to in an upcoming iteration, things like that. So anyway, yes.
Awesome. I think balance is really hard to do on our own enough.
Mhm.
So having that organizational support of it is amazing and does wonders. Maybe what are the barriers to entry? We talked a little bit about barriers early, but in terms of why this might happen, what are these barriers to entry or barriers to sticking with technology? Is there anything we haven't talked about in terms of these barriers for technical careers, especially ones that might be more prevalent for women than men?
A lot of it is this kind of historical mindset about what it takes to have developed a skill in IT. And so what we'll often see on job descriptions at many companies is like X number of years of experience. I won't even say what they are because they're kind of irrelevant to me, but X number of years of experience to demonstrate that you can do a certain job. Makes sense for doctors, absolutely, but not necessarily in all tech roles. So I think that companies being more open to different types of experiences and people like coming to the table with aptitude and potential will help. But I think that is one of the bigger roadblocks. And it kind of goes back to one of the points Monika mentioned earlier about women in general. And this is like reported on in multiple places. I cannot quote a source right now, so I won't even try. But if we don't meet 90% or more of the criteria in the required skills on a job, we won't even apply. And so if the first thing is you must have X number of years of experience and you're like, well, I have like a fraction of that, but all the other skills, then you might just skip that opening altogether, So I think some of that does get in the way for people.
Yeah, and I agree. And also the first, so there's the tech shortage, right? The tech shortage of professionals to fill the tech jobs, but there's a lot of different gaps. There's also the soft skills gap. There's also the first job in tech, getting your first job in tech where it's like, okay, we're gonna, we're trying to find the education, but they're not gonna have years of experience. And so it's really important for employers to kind of look at it like, okay, there's interest in that, right? And so being able to have that partnership with some of the, whether it's colleges or even, the nonprofit like ours, it's really important for it's not just the institution, but really being able to help other people with the businesses itself, to make sure that they have at least given a chance, because that help prevents a lot of people, like, I got this tech training, now I'm like, nothing really changed, right? And so being able to have like different, one thing that we're looking into is apprenticeship. A lot people focus on internships, but that's also only from colleges, right? There's a lot of career changers that need that step, the foot in the door, and so apprenticeship is one thing that we're kind of really focusing on, is like, how do we get these entry level people a foot in the door to kind of at least given a chance, and so again, I think that, like Shonna mentioned, there's like the thing that I have to go to college for 4 years and do all this stuff, which there's some careers that you do, but there's a lot that you don't. And so I think a lot of times there are not a lot of knowledge of not knowing that it doesn't take that long to get into a tech career. And again, there's a lot of non-technical careers that you can still be part of a tech team, and so so I think just not knowing or not knowing how long it's going to take, or not knowing or not having the resources to get your foot in the door with some of those organizations.
I kind of think the flip side too is bringing that awareness to girls at a younger age too. So thinking about my experience going to high school, I didn't really know much about it until of all the different careers, until kind of later as I was searching for different opportunities. And so I think just continuing to do different organizations like the Girls Who Code, and going to high schools and talking about all of the different opportunities would be super helpful as well, because I think if I was shown that early on, I would have maybe been a part of different courses, or maybe learned a couple things prior to going to college. So that would definitely help, I think, get more women interested and learn about it early on.
I agree. I do want to just go back to the apprenticeship point. There are companies in town Omaha, that are already doing that. And I think one of the things that we may not do a great job of is promoting that those companies that are already investing in their talent and providing these like longer term, we'll train you and we'll mentor you and support you and help you, develop your career in tech. So I think there's like a promotional opportunity there, if that makes sense, to just start telling more of these stories, because it's certainly a gap still, as Monika mentioned, but there is some good traction. It's just not well publicized, I don't think.
Yeah, and just kind of sharing like what's working with your organization that we can implement to the other organization. I mean, there's like just a huge talent of people, and there's a lot of organizations that could be using that, and so we can help each other along the way, like what's working, what's not working, and even in different states as well. There's a lot of successful programs, but like what does that look like? So like how can we bring that to here? But kind of just kind of what Kate mentioned is like also, like you mentioned, having that early exposure to STEM, right? A lot of times we don't get that till, especially in the underserved communities. So AIM is really focused on providing those free tech experiences to kids ages 7 to 17. And so, again, it's great to be able to like let them know that this is actually like, it's not intimidating, it's fun, and I can be a drone pilot for a UP, or just. There's just a lot of opportunities for us to expose kids earlier on, especially in underserved communities, to diversify that tech workforce.
One more thing, this is supportive of what Monika just said, is that it's especially in underserved communities, and this kind of goes back to a point Kate made earlier, that her mom was a VA at a company, so she had that early career exposure, being able to job shadow, meeting people that are doing that work on a day-to-day basis. But having companies invest back or reach back, if you will, into schools and be a part of that and support those opportunities is super huge. And helping those kiddos build connections in the tech workforce that they won't be able to otherwise. It's impossible in most cases. So I'm glad AIM is doing that. So it's good stuff.
So finally, I'd like to close out today's episode with some talk on action items. So, what is being done currently in our communities to help solve this issue? And I know we went into a little bit of that already.
So AIM is a not-for-profit with the mission to grow a strong and diverse tech talent community, through career development, educational programs, and outreach. So we're really intentional about going into schools, engaging those kids earlier on to kind of expose them to the STEM programming so that they can get excited about, STEM and going into a tech career. But then also, we provide tech education for people that are wanting to get into tech, right? And we break all those barriers, so there's scholarships available for anyone that wants to get into tech. And then from that, we also provide that mentorship. So if you're looking to get into tech, we work with different members to make sure that you can at least get your foot in the door, get those interviews, just to get those bridging those gaps, from the first job in tech. Besides that, we have the leadership academies, which is more for adult learning and how do we get more women into leadership roles, right? And so a lot of organizations, including Mutual, they sponsor people to go through this program together to help advance their IT leadership skills, to be able to kind of be those leaders in their community and in their companies. And so again, there's just a lot of different things that we do to bridge those gaps, because it's not just the tech talent gap, there's that leadership gap, there's that for job and tech talent gap. And so AIM is really focused on building that strong and diverse tech talent community through some of their initiatives.
Yeah, for me, I definitely see and still attend and support a lot of the UNO events and programs that they have put together for women in technology. For example, the Women in IT mentoring program. Found very great value in that, as well as some of the different community groups that they kind of mention in that group. I didn't realize all of the different community groups outside of UNO when I was in college. So I think that's something that can continue to be mentioned and announced, is that it's great to connect with others outside in the community versus just at UNO. So I think continuing to host those events, bringing women into that is super valuable.
So at Mutual, I have the privilege of being a part of a few pilots. So we have our own internal apprenticeship program that we partner with Metropolitan Community Colleges Code School. We have for the last 4 years. And through that, we're sending people who are on the business side or in non-engineer careers in IT through this training to help them get onto an engineering career path. So that's one program that we started off in 2018. And then we just started a brand new pilot with Don't Panic Labs in Lincoln, where we're sending our associates through a 20-week training program where they're pretty much dedicated to that program for the entire time. And then they come back to work with new skills. So we're just looking at a lot of different options to help our associates advance their skills, modernize their skills, whatever they need to do to stay, relevant and supported by us. So we're pretty proud of those programs. Outside of Mutual of Omaha, I still do a lot in the community, even in the Omaha community virtually. So I work a lot with Mystery Code Society, which is a nonprofit organization made up of female volunteers who are all tech professionals, and they donate their time teaching coding classes and various technical classes to non-cis male identifying students. So super exciting. Code Black, led by David Pollock, I support that as well. So he's really focused on helping increase the Black and his Latinx representation in IT. So love those efforts, and just many others like that, including the Nebraska Tech Collaborative. I co-chair the Workforce Pipeline Committee. So we have a few initiatives underway focused on internship collaboration, incumbent worker training, which is existing employees and helping them get into tech jobs, and then also just data collection and things like that. So I stay active in Nebraska, even though I don't live there.
I know you want to come back. I'm just kidding.
Awesome. Lots of good work happening. And I've got one final question for you guys to close it out. What do we need to start doing or do more of to truly solve this problem?
Go ahead, Monika. Yes.
I think just a lot of times we think we have to have a certain status to turn around and pull someone else back, right? But I think anytime you get ahead a little bit, who else can you bring along to like, who, how can you bring someone along? And so don't wait for like this moment where like, oh, close to retirement, I can now give back. No, it's like, like you have some responsibility to be able to turn around and like, who else can you bring along? And so look within your community or just even your organization, like who is someone that maybe an intern that you can, mentor. And so especially, the female ones that can see the support of other women and maybe want to get excited about, joining an IT workforce. And so again, I think that support and like mentorship and just, again, bringing people along is so important. Like having someone that cares, that wants to see you succeed as well in that field, I think is something that has been helpful for me. And so that's something that I try to do.
I was going to say the exact same thing, like the connections and the relationships are so important. And so, being that one to, maybe reach out to an intern or, a new woman in the company, I think it shows a lot, and it, it's a great connection and somebody that you can reach out to down the road.
And outside of these two great ideas, if you're feeling super ambitious, one very easy thing you can do in most communities is connect with your local library, which I'm a huge fan of. But they're often looking for people to come in and teach classes. So it's typically not a paid opportunity, so be prepared for that. But that's really not the point. It's really about connecting with people in the community, sharing opportunities in tech, things like that. I've started several meetup groups and have gone to different communities and led workshops on very basic intro to web development, but it's amazing to me how new it is to so many people. So it's never a waste of time to give back in that way.
And now I think a lot of employers too, that's really great to see is that they actually give volunteering hours. So if you're looking to volunteer and you're in IT or tech, like definitely reach out to the organizations that are looking, like your library or even some of the programs that we have. Like we're always looking for teachers or always looking for people to share their IT journey. And so just kind of connect with any of those nonprofits or just, in general, like the library or any other places that, could use that knowledge that you take for granted because you're like, oh, everybody knows this, right? But you've been in it for so long that just a little bit can like change someone's life. It can literally change the trajectory of someone's life, and then especially being low income, like it change the trajectory of their entire family. And so when you really just take the time to share your knowledge and invest in your community.
Well, awesome. Thank you, ladies, for joining here today and giving some inspiring advice and sharing your experiences. I think that'll be a wrap on this episode of Try Catch. Thank you very much.